folks, this is my serious one of the day. I've got the bins and I'm going to read this one to you. I don't want to get it wrong. Talk about chalk and cheese. You'll know what I'm saying when I tell you about this one. This is how other countries react to the possibilities of uprisings and deaths and terrorist threats. Yeah, at a time when it's been reported in the press this weekend that senior security staff in this country are saying this country's facing the greatest threat level of terrorism they've had since the 9/11 attacks. That's on the back of all that's happening in Gaza at this moment in time and how volatile the world is. Right, on the back of that, I've read something over the weekend. You may or may not have read it. This is how a neighbouring country of ours deals with something that they're unsure about. This has happened in France over the last week or two. Where do we start? Right. 52-year-old Muslim preacher and imam. Is it an imam? I think it is an imam. I'm not that clever. I do apologise. Majoub Bajubi. That's probably the same as our David Davis or the Italian Marconi. Yeah, Majubi. He lived near Avignon in France. Tunisian of birth. He's 52 years of age. He's lived in France for the last 40 years. He's never, ever had French residency for all he's lived there for 40 years. He holds a Tunisian passport. Anyway, this gentleman has his own building company, runs his own building company, and he preaches at his local mosque every Friday. His preachings are watched by a congregation of 500 and about 12,000 on YouTube. Anyway, over the last week or two, he's done his latest sermon, and he's mentioned the tricolore. That's the French flag. And what he said is, I want to make sure I get this right. Well, he's likened the tricolore. Wherever wrote it, I need to get this right. Bear with me, folks. I do apologise. Yes, in his sermon, he's mentioned the tricolore, and he says the flag is a devilish symbol that causes division amongst Muslims. And he said, in fact, he believes it has a satanic value. The French authorities are worried about this because, as I say, he's preaching to 500, mostly young Muslim men, and he's got a congregation of another 12,000, not congregation, a gallery of another 12,000 watching on Facebook. Anyway, to this then, what the French have done is they've knocked on his door a few hours after the sermon has been made public and they've been told about it. They've knocked on his door, 15 security guards, all plain clothes. They've asked him to sign a letter, and they've asked for his Tunisian passport. With that, they've put him in the cars. Within 8 hours, he's been put on a plane, and he's been dropped off in Tunisia, the place of his birth. And that's it, and they've washed their hands of him. They said, that's it, you're not coming back, you're not doing that anymore. We're not having that on our soil. And I thought to myself, now it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with what they've done there, although I find it hard to disagree. But the French are saying, why should we allow somebody in our country that we've looked after for 40 odd years preaching what we perceive to be as hate and trying to cause trouble at a time when the world's in a really bad state anyway, as I've said earlier, with what's happening in Gaza. He's got many, many young followers and we don't know how they're going to take things. He's saying it was all meant in innocence and he's a good person and he's got good values, you know, and he's called out some of the things that have happened in the past, like the backclave thing and whatever else. But many have said, no, he knew what he was saying, he knew what he was doing. I mean, France is a place, let's not forget, where a teacher, was it about 2010, was it? Teaching a class that had some Muslims within the class, did a cartoon drawing with the Prophet Muhammad in there, and on the back of that, extremists have beheaded the guy. You know, I think he was a French citizen, and he got beheaded by Muslims because they thought he shouldn't have been taking the Prophet Muhammad's name in vain and whatever else, putting him in a cartoon setting. There's lots of Muslims in France, as there is in Great Britain, as there is probably throughout Europe. And the French are saying, no, this is what we're going to do. If you think that, you go back there, don't stay in our country any longer. And I thought to myself, well, isn't it strange? We had a guy only a few years ago that came over to this country. We found out he'd been done in the past, was it molestation, molesting women. He asked for asylum, we said no. We never shipped him away. He asked again a couple of years later, we said no, we never shipped him away. We let him here while he was appealing it over 2 or 3 years. He then comes back to us and says, wait a minute now, I've turned to Christianity. Oh, have you? Oh, that's all right, we'll have some of that. Oh, yes, get the paper signed, you're British. Stay as long as you want, no problem at all. That was great, wasn't it? You know, that everyone's a winner, apart from that young mother and a couple of kiddies who had corrosive substances through in the face only a few weeks ago. He's now dead. He's now dead, but he's ruined that lady's life and the kiddie's life probably forever. I believe she might lose an eye. All because he said he turned to Christianity. In France, all this guy mentioned was 2 lines about the French flag and how he thought it was satanic in its makeup. Bumf, gone. And you think to yourself, well, I suppose if people are in your country, you know, for all they're now maybe citizens and they've moved to this country, you've looked after them for many a year, people in the country shouldn't turn on the country that they're living in. If they're not happy with the country they're living in, they should go of their own volition to a country that they like. The French have took that line. Well, you don't like it here, you obviously like it there, or you were born there, that's where you're going to. And I thought, good on the French. Isn't that the way to do things? Your thoughts below. And this is no hatred. I've got no hatred towards Muslims, no hatred towards Jews, no hatred towards anybody. I've got no dog in any fight. But I think we can safely say that what we did in this country to somebody that we knew was a criminal, what we did ultimately was wrong because he's ruined, as I say, a young lady and a daughter's life. What they're doing in France is they're trying to make sure the same kind of things don't happen. But there will be things on a much greater scale, obviously. A congregation of 500 and a Facebook following of 12,000 gives a lot of potential for a lot of issues further down the line, doesn't it? Anyway, your thoughts down below.